Thank you all for joining us today for our session, Teaching Computer Literacy to Adult Learners. So now I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Cris LaFortune. Cris is an academic teacher with Zephyr Hills Correctional Institution for the Florida Department of Corrections. He's passionate about technology, and he's also a welcome addition to our conference. Cris?
All right, hi everybody. So today we're going to talk about digital literacy, which when I pitched this a couple months ago, I had no idea that we were all going to be distance learning now. And of course that looks a little bit different in corrections than it does on the outside. This is more geared towards those of you out in the public who are able to use the internet to interact with your students. All right, so first off, today we're going to talk about what digital literacy is, and we're going to look at the standards for digital literacy in Florida, and then also beyond. We're going to talk about some strategies for incorporating digital literacy into your curriculum, and then we're going to look at a bunch of resources for you as an instructor and for your students. So first off, this is an open-ended question if you want to answer it in the chat. What is digital literacy? Okay, Michelle said using a computer. Paul said knowing how to use the language of technology. Somebody said in the Q&A basic computer skills. Using technology, ability to communicate via online platforms. I really like that one from Marissa. So all of you are on the right track. The American Library Association defines it as the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information. So it's not only being able to use technology, but it's also knowing how to use it effectively, knowing how to evaluate those many pieces of information that we can find online, and then also knowing how to share our own information online. Really like this one that just came in from Sheila. She said the ability to use tech to find education, recreation, and life resources, using tech to facilitate goals in many places. That's awesome. So my definition is knowing how to use technology responsibly, because like Uncle Ben from Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. There's a lot of information out there online, and not all of that information is necessarily good information. So part of our job as educators is helping students to kind of navigate that and help them find good information online. All right, so now that we have an understanding of what digital literacy is, why do you think we should teach it? Adele says it's important in life and in the workplace. That's very true. Vital in today's world. Answers are coming in kind of fast, so I'm going to scroll up. So people can connect with the world meaningfully and safely. Very good. So our students can keep up with the changing world, definitely. Create a better educated workforce. And then two people said that you need it to function and it's a key life skill. Very true. Way too much information out there. We need to know how to disseminate it and use it appropriately. That was from Marlene, and that is very true, especially when we're all kind of forced to do so much of our communicating online nowadays. Also, Jerry pointed out that it's important for applying for work and for getting a GED, since all of our standardized tests are on the computer now, and I think that's very important. All right, so like you said, it is vital in today's society to know how to use a computer. In a 2015 Pew Research poll, found that 52% of adults are relatively hesitant online, and only 17% were found to be digitally ready, which means that they're confident in their skills and able to identify reliable information online. So here's a breakdown of that study. Again, they found about 17% were confident in their skills and using technology to find reliable information. 30% were deemed cautious clickers, which this group had high levels of tech ownership, but they weren't as likely to use it for learning online. About 33% were reluctant, which means that they have technology, but they might not use it for internet learning. 5% were traditional learners, which means that they are actively seeking information, but they're not using technology to do it. And then about 15% were totally unprepared, which means that they have low levels of technology adoption and they don't use it for learning, and that they're not confident in their computer skills. So where do you think your students fall? Do you think that they're confident with their technology skills? I know personally, my students are mostly 50 years old and older, and many of them have been incarcerated for a long time, so they're definitely on the more unprepared side of things, and that's okay. But I'm curious to see what your population looks like. Dana says about half of my ELLs are confident. Edgar says that he's also working with an older population who are working with tablets. Sheila says it varies. Mildred says even us are in the learning process. I think that's important too. Some students are intimidated. Teach computer skills as well as English. Jamie said something interesting. Most young people are great with phones, can't use computers. Okay. Yeah, so definitely a range of skills, range of abilities. So we're gonna kind of come back to this, but let's look at some standards for digital literacy. So first off, it's important to look at the ABE and GED standards. There are 4 digital literacy standards, and they're actually exactly the same for both levels. The only difference is one says ABE, the other says GED on it. The first one is develop basic keyboarding and numerical keypad skills. So that would be your typing. I see a lot of people are talking about that. Second standard, produce a variety of documents such as research papers, resumes, charts, and tables using word processing programs. It's kind of taking it a step further from being able to type to being able to draft an actual document. Standard 3, use internet search engines such as Google, Bing, or Yahoo to collect data and information. Not really possible in corrections, but there's still, we can talk about evaluating sources and such. Right, and then standard 4, practice safe, legal, and responsible sharing of information, data, and opinions online. So that is so important in this digital age. And just because your students know how to use the internet and the computer doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to use it responsibly. All right, so what about K-12? And I found that technology is pretty absent in the core subject area standards. If you go in and try to look for digital literacy or technology, you're pretty much only going to find it in the computer science standards. but some of them are actually very relevant to digital literacy. If you go down to the last page, there's a section called Personal, Community, Global, and Ethical Impact. And these standards have to do with the responsible use of technology and information. And then you can see compare and contrast appropriate and inappropriate social networking behaviors, describe and demonstrate ethical and responsible use of modern communication media and devices, and then evaluate the impact of irresponsible use of information, plagiarism, falsification of data on collaborative projects. And then standard 2, the impact of computing resources on local and global society. There's a wealth of really good standards in here about using the internet for communication, evaluating online sources. This last one here talks about the societal and economic factors related to access to critical information and technology. Definitely, if you're dealing with your students not having devices at home, I'm sure you're also feeling this right now. And then standard 3 directly relates to evaluating digital information resources. So this is definitely related to the evaluating sources RLA standards. We're looking at things like currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose of digital information. And then the second standard goes a little bit further and talks about bias of electronic information resources. So thinking about like the author's purpose and where this information comes from. All right, can I take it back to full screen? So, and again, all of those standards were kind of buried in the computer science curriculum, which is an elective course. And Common Core is very similar to the Florida standards in terms of incorporating technology into the core subject areas. But there's an International Society for Technology and Education called ISTE, and they have a set of standards for students that has been adopted in some way, shape, or form by all 50 states. But since it's not necessarily like required, in my experience with public schools, it's not, adoption may vary, is what I'm getting at. So the ISTE standards, these are a framework for incorporating technology into the classroom. They can be used with any age group or any subject area. And it covers digital citizenship, online communication, and collaboration. So this is kind of just, instead of like computer science gets very technical, ISTE is more open-ended and can be applied to whatever subject or age group you're working with. So all 50 states have adopted some form of these standards. Florida adopted the 2007 version, and I believe the latest one came out in 2016. Marlene said in the chat that K5 in my county, they have a weekly tech course which includes digital literacy. That's awesome. I wish more schools did that. So how do you currently incorporate technology into your curriculum? Is it like a weekly thing? Is it something you're having to do every day now during distance learning? I'm assuming a lot of people have had to kind of change their approach due to the coronavirus. Very cool. Tally said that they use Zoom and Teams. Weekly computer lab time. Pre-COVID, they had a computer-aided language lab. daily practice using Burlington English, and Classroom has iPads. Very cool. Started using Blackboard Ultra due to COVID-19. Yeah, personally, we used to have the computer lab every day, but during COVID, we couldn't have them in the computer lab, so we had to switch to entirely paper-based packets for about 3 months. Just started classes again last week, so it was definitely difficult. Use smart technology, Google Classroom, digital cameras, and Write. Awesome. My own personal website for ESOL, computer lab once a week, one-on-one tutoring. All right, so a bunch of different approaches, different levels of incorporating technology into the classroom. So really quickly, I'm just going to go over the different areas of the ISTE standards and kind of what that might look like. So the first area is Empowered Learner, in which the learner sets personal learning goals. They use technology to seek feedback and demonstrate their knowledge. They have an understanding of fundamental technology concepts. They're able to troubleshoot issues and then apply their knowledge to new technology. So this has to do with getting those basic computer skills, but and also taking ownership of their learning to set those technology-related goals. Second one, digital citizenship, super important now that we're all online all the time. Has to do with online identities and reputation, understanding the permanence of their actions in a digital world, safe, ethical, and legal behavior online, and then knowing how to use and share other people's intellectual property. So that has to do with citing your sources, which is also a GD standard that also shows up in your language test sometimes. You'll see like which citation is correct MLA format or something like that. And then talking about digital privacy and security. All right, 3 is Knowledge Constructor, which is conducting online research, evaluating sources, using information from multiple sources, exploring real-world issues and problems, which is something we always want to be doing with our adult learners. And evaluating sources and pulling information from multiple perspectives is such an integral part of reading language arts. It can also be applied to social studies, even science, talking about looking at different information and pulling it together. Area 4 is called Innovative Designer. So this has to do with using steps to solve problems, using digital tools to solve them more effectively, working with open-ended problems, and again, with our adult learners, we always want to tie in lessons to real-world examples. And using the internet for research is a good way to accomplish that goal while building their digital citizenship skills at the same time. 5 is Computational Thinkers. This has to do with analyzing data, exploring and finding solutions, collecting their data, and using digital tools to analyze and represent data. So to me, this has to do more with like math and science, gathering up data and then being able to like interpret and represent it. And then breaking problems down into smaller parts, which I think is a valuable skill in any subject area, taking a larger task and then figuring out how to tackle it effectively. Next is creative communicators, which has to do with choosing the best tool for representing information, creating original works, or responsibly repurposing digital resources, and then communicating complex ideas clearly and effectively. So this area, I think, relates really well to speaking and listening skills, which you'll see a lot in Reading Language Arts Standards, also ESOL. And then presenting or publishing content tailored to their intended audience. So again, speaking and listening, being able to communicate your ideas. All right, and then the last area is global collaborator, which is connecting and collaborating with other learners, contributing to project teams performing a variety of roles, exploring local and global issues, and using technology to investigate solutions. So again, I think that ties in really well to your speaking and listening standards and kind of what we're having to do right now with collaborating using online technology instead of being face-to-face. So what are your thoughts on this framework and how do you think they can tie in with your curriculum? Dana pointed out that Burlington English has an excellent tutorial on using a computer. Rex says that it's a great way to teach Netiquette. I think that's very true. Netiquette is definitely a part of digital citizenship. For those of you who don't know, Netiquette is like internet etiquette. So that would be things like not talking in all caps, being polite when you're posting things online, that kind of thing. So Michelle asked about what internet etiquette. What did you say was the internet etiquette site? I didn't list a website for it, but I'm sure that some of the resources I've linked I'm going to talk about later might have part of that in there. Great framework to keep in mind when planning lessons. Cool. All right. So now we're going to talk about some strategies for incorporating digital literacy into the adult education classroom. So as we kind of discussed earlier, you probably have a wide range of computer skills in your classroom. So a great first step would be to figure out what they know already. And there's a website called North Star that has really awesome quizzes that can assess their basic computer skills. And then based on whatever diagnostic tool you decide to use, you can help your students set learning goals related to technology. And then from that goal, help them come up with a plan for how they're going to meet those goals. And then when we're thinking about how to incorporate technology, we need to think about what we know about adult learners. So we know they're self-directed, goal-oriented. They have a bunch of prior experience. They're very practical. We want to try to meet them where they are, and they want hands-on learning. Oh, thank you, Nicole. She just linked the North Star computer literacy quizzes in the chat if anybody's interested. So all of those characteristics of adult learners are from Oregon Department of Education. Now we're going to talk about some techniques for teaching digital literacy. So first off, direct instruction means everybody's doing the same thing. So that could look like a teacher showing everybody how to use a new technology tool. There's also small group instruction, which is everybody doing a different thing. Zoom actually has a pretty cool feature where you can make breakout sections during your call. So then you can have people working in smaller groups and then come back together in the large session. Problem-based learning, which is team-based and focused on solving an open-ended problem. That kind of takes small group instruction a step further. So instead of just working in small groups, they're working on creating a solution for the problem. And the last one is self-directed learning, which is the student decides what they're going to work on that day, which is kind of the approach that I've had to take in corrections with the student gets a packet once a week and they kind of have to, manage themselves and figure out what they want to work on. So again, strategies for COVID distance learning. So first off, you can incorporate news articles into the classroom. So that would be evaluating sources, using multiple perspectives. There are a bunch of museums offering free virtual tours right now. Teaching Tolerance has a digital literacy lesson plan. They have a bunch of free resources you can use. There are a bunch of online tools for collaboration that you can have your students work on stuff together with, like Google Docs or Slides, Prezi, which is a presentation software, Notion, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. It's kind of an organizational tool, but people can work on like creating documents and that kind of thing together. And again, technology instruction also relates to career readiness. I think it's important to touch on the online job search since most jobs are posted online. Also, incorporating career research and talking about social media as a networking tool. There's a study that found that 92% of companies use social media for some part of their recruitment. And then there are also some challenges to digital learning, such as lack of access to technology. So at home, if they don't have a computer at home, one thing we did pre-COVID was creating time and space for technology during class time. And again, when the libraries are open, they could go to the library for free computer access. One thing we can do if students don't have computers, maybe they have a mobile device, and there are lots of cool mobile-friendly tools. And then, again, dealing with if they just don't have any electronic devices, being flexible about how work gets submitted, maybe trying to translate your digital lessons into a paper format. And if you're dealing with lack of access at your institution, maybe creating a schedule to utilize the computer labs, using like stations or centers during class time so that people are doing like shorter time on the computer, but everybody gets time on the computer. Again, if students have access to smartphones or tablets, incorporating tools they can connect on with their own personal devices. So some tools that you might be able to use are Kahoot, Google Classroom, or Mind, and Notion, which I'll go over in a second. So if there's no internet access, like all of my friends in corrections, there are some offline programs that you can use. There are, of course, printable resources. And then as kind of a last resort, because it's pretty labor intensive, creating low-tech versions of online resources. So like instead of a cool like video for how to use this technology, maybe printing out an article or that kind of thing. So what are some challenges that you're dealing with at your site right now? And then on the flip side of that, what is working well in your classroom? Dana mentioned in an open enrollment environment where students start the class in the middle of the term, instruction has to be repeated. I think that's a good point, and I think that technology can kind of help bridge that gap because students can kind of like catch up at their own pace with using digital tools. Okay, students with older phones with insufficient memory, it would be kind of a burden on that if they were being asked to download all these new apps. Many people are afraid of technology, so getting them to overcome that fear is a challenge, definitely, for sure. Public library that isn't allowing meetings and limiting computer use. Some areas of the library are closed right now. Duna says that games like Quizlet and Kahoot work well. Definitely agree. Misha says, I had someone say they were afraid they push a button and the computer would blow up. Suzanne says older students may not have technology background needed, especially those who have never, incarcerated students who have never used a computer. Yep, I have a student who doesn't know which button on the mouse to press, so he's constantly opening up the like double click menu instead of clicking on things like he wants to. Lack of computers, data plans on phones, and digital skills. But WhatsApp video calls are working well. All right, so problems connecting at home and language barriers, definitely. Marlene says this season has made our district aware and more proactive. In K-12, they're providing computers to families that don't have them. Okay, so adults are getting access if they have children in the school system. That's something I didn't even think of, but that's a really cool, I guess, side effect of that. They're accessing Burlington English from home, and we can see their learning upgrade. Cool. Yeah, it's interesting how COVID has kind of forced us to adopt more technology in the classroom. Someone else said students who live in rural areas have difficulty maintaining connection with the internet. True. All right, so now on to the resource list. Here is the link to it. So this is using Notion, which is that productivity software I was talking about a little bit earlier. Can I make my screen a little bit bigger? All right. So this touches on a lot of the resources I talked about in the presentation in terms of like the standards at the top. My resource list has a list of more resource lists. But many of these sites have good information, and a lot of their resources have kind of overlapped with the ones that I found as well. But I wanted to point them out to you because, again, they're good websites with a lot of good information. Like the Library Association, Crowded Learning. I actually went to his presentation yesterday. They have a really cool tool for aligning book and digital resources to the ABE and GED math standards, if you want to check that out. Florida Literacy Coalition had their own resource list, so here it is if you're interested. Here's a list of 11 free typing lessons. It evaluates the pros and cons. So if you wanted to pick one that would suit your needs. This is a Google Doc with a bunch of different mobile apps for the classroom. Florida ISTE, which is the Institute for Professional Development of Adult Educators. They have a bunch of fabulous webinars, a bunch of free lesson plans for ABE, GED, math, science, whatever you want. They had a webinar for integrating ABE technology standards and a similar report for the GED classroom. Another resource is called Candy. This application lets you draw on your screen. It integrates into Google Classroom, and the basic plan is free. I think they're doing some sort of promotion during the COVID times for educators. Same thing with Newsela. You can get free premium Newsela for the rest of the year due to the COVID crisis. And this is a fabulous website that has news articles on just about any topic, available in many different reading levels. They also have articles in Spanish, and many of them are related to technology. But even if it's not technology related, you can still use it as a lesson in evaluating online resources. Kind of meta, link to Notion in my Notion board. You can collaborate to up to 5 other users on this free plan if you wanted to work with other educators. Also, I can export this as a PDF. It doesn't have to be a online resource, but I liked giving you the link because this is a living document. When I go and add more stuff to it, as I find more stuff, you'll always have the link and it'll be the most current version. Sheila says her 12-year-old nephew loves Newsela, loved changing the reading level. Yep, I loved it when I was working in middle school as well. And yes, it has to do with your Lexile score, or yeah, I think there's like 4 or 5 different Lexile levels available for every single article. They also have little quizzes that go with each of them. It's a really cool resource. Next one's called Remind. It has text notifications, two-way messaging, but you're not actually exchanging phone numbers with your students, so that helps maintain privacy. Teaching Tolerance has free digital literacy lesson plans geared towards K-12, but again, it can be scaled up for adults as well. They also have really good lesson plans on racial justice, and that is also relevant during current events. Wakelet. Another thing that I learned about just yesterday and added to this thing last minute, but it's a free tool for gathering together online content. It's an organization tool that you can use to create resources for the students. It's also available as a mobile app. These are student resources. Most of them are for building those basic computer skills. There's one called Digital Learn, which is video courses, but they also have PDF transcripts for those of us who have to print stuff out instead of show videos in class, or for those who have like hard of hearing students, that might be useful. Goodwill Community Foundation. Yes, it's actually run by Goodwill the store. They have computer skills courses that have videos. It also has an interactive typing game. Inside Sherpa is something I found last week. It's free virtual internships that show students what a day in the life on a job would be like in various different companies and roles. So that could be something really cool for career college readiness. Microsoft has a digital literacy course. It's available in 12 different languages. It has printable transcripts, and there are free certificates of completion. Again, North Star, free interactive tests. They have tests on mouse safety and Microsoft Office, as well as your basic mouse and keyboard skills. The only thing is you don't get a certificate of completion unless, or not you, but the student doesn't get a certificate unless the school is a testing site. And then here's more typing. This one has ads. There's also a subscription option for schools. And then moving on down to the bottom with offline resources, there's Aztec, which is not free, unfortunately, but it has fabulous GED and ABE courses. They have career skills. They also have computer skills. There's this job application simulator from the National Institute of Corrections. There's Calibri, which is a free offline learning platform that has all of the Khan Academy videos. Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing is a favorite at my site. And then there's a company called Technomedia that has a basic mouse and keyboard skill course through interactive lessons. So again, here's a link to that. And if you'd like to link to my presentation, I will link that in a moment because I see a question for it in the chat. Any other questions? Ms. Shebarth said Technomedia has other course offerings and packages too. So I hope that you found a useful resource to take away, and hopefully we can use this time as an opportunity to try out new resources and new strategies. You're very welcome.
All right, thank you so much, Cris. We're gonna let people still kind of put in any questions here. Let's see. So Cris, you shared your presentation in the chat already? Okay, so the presentation is going to be in the chat. I thank you all for coming to the session today, and again, thank you, Cris. So I do want to let you guys know that there's going to be a survey that comes up after you close this session, so please make sure to fill out that survey. Your feedback is really important to us. I do also want to remind you all that the silent auction closes at 4 p.m. today, so make sure to get on that quickly. You know, most of the items I bid on have already been outbid. So please remember to go on there and also go on the portal to participate in the discussion forum. All right, thank you all so much.